What would you do if the person you thought was gone forever suddenly appeared in the most unexpected place? For Leonardo Rocha, a man who had everything money could buy but nothing that truly mattered, this question became a reality. 12 years after his daughter vanished without a trace, life threw him into a whirlwind of emotions when he walked into a modest cafe one ordinary afternoon. What he found there wasn't just a cup of coffee. It was the spark of a story that would change everything. This isn't your typical reunion tale. It's about heartbreak, hope, and a mystery that goes deeper than love itself. As Leonardo stared into the eyes of a young barista with a familiar scar on her wrist, memories of his lost daughter came rushing back. Could it really be her? Or was it just another cruel twist of fate? What followed is a journey filled with compassion, courage, and a shocking revelation that will leave you questioning the very fabric of trust and truth. But let me warn you, this isn't a story of easy answers or simple solutions. It's a reminder that life has a way of surprising us, especially when we least expect it. Get ready to dive into a world where every detail matters, every choice carries weight, and every emotion feels strikingly real. By the end, you'll find yourself inspired in ways you never imagined, and you might just see the world a little differently. Leonardo Rocha was the kind of man who seemed to have it all. A tech tycoon, celebrated for his revolutionary ideas and boundless ambition, his name was synonymous with success. Yet, behind the walls of his luxurious mansion, the echoing silence was a constant reminder of the one thing he could never reclaim. His daughter, Clara. 12 long years had passed since that fateful day on the beach, yet every detail was etched in his memory. Her laughter blending with the sound of the waves, the tiny footprints disappearing into the sand. His wealth could buy anything except the answer to the question that haunted him daily. Where was Clara? Every corner of his home held traces of her, a silent testament to the life that once filled it. Her favorite teddy bear, faded and worn, sat untouched on a shelf in her old bedroom. Leonardo couldn't bring himself to move it, as though doing so would erase her existence entirely. Friends and colleagues often praised his resilience, but they didn't know about the sleepless nights spent poring over police reports and private investigations. His success was a mask, a facade to hide the gaping wound left by her absence. Compassion from strangers meant little when all he wanted was the empathy of someone who truly understood his pain. Time, they said, healed all wounds, but for Leonardo, it only deepened the void. As the years went by, his world became a kaleidoscope of what-ifs and regrets. He questioned every decision he made that day, replaying the events like a broken record. Did he look away for too long? Could he have done something differently? The guilt was relentless, a heavy chain dragging him down even as he climbed the ladder of success. How could a man inspire millions while failing to protect the one person who mattered most? Despite his wealth, Leonardo felt powerless. He hired the best detectives, offered staggering rewards, and even sought solace in spiritual advisors. But nothing could fill the emptiness that Clara's disappearance left behind. People called him a genius, a visionary, but he knew better. How could he be so celebrated when his greatest failure stared back at him every morning in the mirror? His heart ached for a simple connection, a flicker of hope to hold on to. In his quiet moments, Leonardo often found himself at the beach where Clara vanished, staring at the horizon as if expecting her to walk out of the waves. The ocean, once a source of joy, now mirrored his despair. Vast, unpredictable, and hiding countless secrets beneath its surface. It was here, amidst the crashing waves and the salty breeze, that he allowed himself to feel the raw weight of his emotions. Empathy from passers-by would sometimes offer brief comfort, but it was fleeting. His wounds ran too deep, his loss too profound. One afternoon, feeling more restless than usual, he wandered into a quaint cafe he had never noticed before. Perhaps it was fate, or maybe just desperation, but something about the place drew him in. As he ordered his coffee and waited, his gaze settled on a young barista behind the counter. There was something eerily familiar about her, though he couldn't quite place it. And then, he saw it, the tiny, star-shaped scar on her wrist. A wave of memories washed over him, leaving him breathless. Could it be? The cafe was unassuming, tucked away on a quiet street that seemed forgotten by the bustling city. Leonardo stepped inside, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the faint hum of conversation. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, just a moment of peace in a world that felt increasingly chaotic. As he stood in line, his eyes wandered aimlessly until they landed on a young woman behind the counter. She moved with an effortless grace, her smile warm yet fleeting, as though she carried her own invisible burdens. Something about her presence stirred an emotion he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just her demeanor. It was the way her hair caught the light, the cadence of her voice as she spoke to customers. There was a familiarity that he couldn't shake, though logic insisted it was nothing more than coincidence. Then, as she reached out to hand him his coffee, he noticed it, the small, star-shaped scar on her wrist. His breath caught in his throat, the cup trembling slightly in his hands. That scar was no ordinary mark. It was the same as Clara's, the one she got after falling off her bike when she was 7. Could it really be her, after all these years? Leonardo couldn't bring himself to leave. He found a seat in the corner, his eyes never straying far from the young woman. She didn't seem to notice his lingering gaze, too busy with the rhythm of her work. But for Leonardo, each passing moment only deepened the uncanny sense of recognition. It wasn't just the scar. It was the way she tilted her head when she listened, the way she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Every little detail felt like a piece of a puzzle he had been trying to solve for over a decade. As the hours stretched on, Leonardo debated with himself, torn between hope and fear. What if he was wrong? What if he was grasping at straws, desperate for a connection that didn't exist? But the idea of walking away, of never knowing for sure, was unbearable. Gathering his courage, he approached the counter once more. His voice trembled as he asked her name, though he already knew what he hoped to hear. "Sophia," she replied, her eyes meeting his for the first time. There was a flicker of something. Recognition, perhaps, or maybe curiosity. Whatever it was enough to make his heart race. The moment felt fragile, like a thread that could snap with the wrong word. Leonardo struggled to find the right thing to say, his mind racing with questions he didn't dare ask. Instead, he offered a nervous smile, thanking her for the coffee and retreating back to his seat. He needed time to think, to process what he had just experienced. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just a random encounter. Sophia was more than a stranger. She was a key, a link to a past he thought he had lost forever. As Leonardo sat there, his coffee growing cold, he found himself replaying the moment over and over. The scar, her mannerisms, even her name. It all felt too significant to ignore. Yet doubt lingered, whispering cruel reminders of how many false leads he had chased before. Still, he couldn't help but feel a spark of something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years: hope. And with that hope came a question he couldn't ignore. What if this was the beginning of the answer he had been searching for all along? Leonardo returned to the cafe the very next day, his mind buzzing with questions and emotions he could barely contain. As Sophia moved about the counter, her necklace caught the light, a simple pendant dangling from a delicate chain. It was unremarkable to most, but to Leonardo, it was like a beacon. He knew that necklace. Clara had worn one just like it, a gift from her mother on her 8th birthday. His heart pounded as memories flooded back. Clara clutching the pendant during thunderstorms, her tiny fingers tracing its outline for comfort. The connection was undeniable, and yet, it felt impossible. Determined to dig deeper, Leonardo waited for a quiet moment before approaching her. He held out his phone, showing her a faded photo of Clara as a child. "This was my daughter," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. Sophia's gaze lingered on the image, her brow furrowing as if trying to place a distant memory. "She looks familiar," Sophia admitted hesitantly, her fingers brushing the edge of the pendant around her neck. Her words were cautious, but there was a flicker of something deeper, a recognition she couldn't quite articulate. Leonardo felt his breath catch, torn between hope and fear. As their conversation continued, Sophia began to share fragments of her own past, memories that felt like scattered pieces of a puzzle. She spoke of faint recollections, A man calling her name near the ocean, the scent of salt water in the air, and a feeling of being held tightly in strong arms. It's all so blurry, she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. I've tried to make sense of it, but it never adds up. Leonardo listened intently, his own memories weaving themselves into her words. The parallels were too striking to ignore. Could these fragments be the key to uncovering the truth? In a bold move, Leonardo asked if she would be willing to meet with him outside of the cafe. I just want to talk, he assured her, sensing her hesitation. Sophia agreed, albeit reluctantly, and they decided to meet at a park nearby. There, away from the bustling cafe, Leonardo shared stories of Clara, her favorite songs, the way she used to laugh, and the countless little things that made her unique. Sophia listened quietly, her expression a mix of curiosity and unease. It all sounds so familiar, she said at last, her voice trembling. But I don't understand why. The more they spoke, the clearer it became that Sophia's memories and Leonardo's stories were two halves of the same narrative. She described a recurring dream she'd had for years, a man's voice calling her back to shore, the sensation of warm sand beneath her feet. It's always the same, Sophia explained, her hands gripping the edges of the park bench. I wake up feeling like I've lost something, but I don't know what. Leonardo felt a surge of empathy, his own emotions mirrored in her confusion. The pieces were beginning to align, but the picture they painted was still incomplete. As dusk settled over the park, Sophia seemed to grow more introspective. She reached for her necklace, her fingers tracing its familiar shape. What if, she began, her voice faltering, what if there's more to my story than I've been told? Leonardo's heart ached at the vulnerability in her words. He wanted to comfort her, to tell her that everything would make sense soon. But even he didn't know what lay ahead. The only certainty was that they had to keep going, to uncover the truth hidden in the shadows of their past. And with that shared resolve, their journey truly began. Sophia sat across from Leonardo, her hands trembling as she recounted the story of how she came to be. I was found on a beach, she began, her voice steady but tinged with unease. A woman told me she saved me, that my family didn't want me anymore. The words hung in the air, each one a dagger to Leonardo's heart. He clenched his fists beneath the table, fighting the wave of anger and disbelief that surged through him. How could someone plant such a cruel lie in the mind of an innocent child? Compassion filled his gaze as he watched her struggle to make sense of it all. Leonardo couldn't shake the feeling that Sophia's story was more than a tragic twist of fate. It was deliberate. His suspicions deepened when, later that night, he found an envelope slipped under his hotel room door. Inside was a single piece of paper, the words scrawled in hurried, angry handwriting. Stop digging into the past. You won't like what you find. The threat was clear, but it only strengthened his resolve. Whoever was behind this wanted him to stay silent, but Leonardo had spent too many years in the dark. He wasn't going to stop now. Sophia's unease grew as Leonardo shared the note with her. Why would someone want to stop you? She asked, her voice trembling. What are they hiding? Leonardo didn't have all the answers, but he knew they couldn't ignore the warning. They needed to tread carefully. As they pieced together Sophia's fragmented memories and the limited clues they had, a chilling possibility began to emerge. What if Clara's disappearance wasn't an accident? What if it was part of something much bigger? A plot orchestrated by someone who had everything to gain from tearing their family apart. Driven by empathy and a fierce need for justice, Leonardo and Sophia began to dig deeper. They revisited old reports, consulted with private investigators, and even reached out to people who had been at the beach that day. Slowly, a picture began to form. A tangled web of deceit, manipulation, and greed. The woman who claimed to have saved Sophia wasn't a stranger. She was connected to someone Leonardo once trusted. The betrayal cut deep, but it also fueled his determination. He wasn't just fighting for the truth. He was fighting for Sophia, for Clara, and for the years they had lost. As the layers of deception were peeled back, Sophia began to recall more details. She remembered a man's voice, calm, reassuring, but with an edge of urgency. He told me not to look back, she said, her brow furrowed in concentration. I didn't understand then, but now? I think he was trying to protect me. Leonardo felt a surge of inspiration as he realized they were closer than ever to uncovering the truth. But with every step forward, the danger became more palpable. Whoever was behind this wouldn't let them expose the truth without a fight. Despite the looming threats, Sophia and Leonardo found strength in their growing bond. They weren't just father and daughter. They were survivors, united by a shared pain and a relentless drive to uncover the truth. As they prepared for the next stage of their journey, Leonardo couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. They were in this together, and no matter what obstacles lay in their way, they wouldn't stop until they had the answers they so desperately sought. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows as Leonardo and Sophia sat together, poring over the scattered fragments of their past. Their journey had been tumultuous, filled with dead ends and heart-wrenching revelations, but it had also brought them closer than they ever imagined. For the first time in years, Leonardo felt a sense of purpose beyond his wealth and accomplishments. His compassion for Sophia grew with every story she shared, every tear she shed. She wasn't just his daughter. She was a survivor, brimming with courage she didn't even realize she had. Together, they were determined to face whatever lay ahead. Their first step was revisiting the beach where it all began. The waves crashed against the shore, a stark contrast to the serenity they both remembered. "This is where it happened," Sophia said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. She closed her eyes, letting the sound of the ocean guide her memories. It was here that she first felt lost, but now, standing beside Leonardo, she felt a spark of hope. The place that once symbolized despair now held the promise of answers. It was as if the tides themselves carried whispers of the truth they sought. As they delved deeper, Leonardo and Sophia uncovered a trail of connections that led them closer to the orchestrators of Clara's disappearance. Their courage was tested at every turn. Anonymous threats, shadowy figures, and obstacles designed to deter them. Yet, their resolve only grew stronger. Leonardo often marveled at Sophia's resilience, her ability to confront fear head-on despite the pain she carried. "You inspire me," he told her one evening, his voice filled with pride. "You remind me why I can't give up." Her response was simple, yet profound. "We're stronger together." The duo's investigation brought them face to face with people from Leonardo's past, individuals whose betrayals had set this tragedy in motion. Each encounter was a test of their empathy and restraint, as anger often threatened to overshadow their mission. But Sophia, with her quiet strength, always managed to bring them back to their purpose. "This isn't about revenge," she reminded him during one particularly tense moment. "It's about finding the truth, for both of us." Her words grounded him, providing the clarity they needed to press forward. With each passing day, their bond deepened. Leonardo saw glimpses of the little girl he once knew in Sophia's laughter and the way she looked at the world with a mix of wonder and determination. But he also saw a woman shaped by hardships, a fighter who refused to let her past define her. The scars of their journey, both literal and emotional, were a testament to their strength. They weren't just uncovering the truth, they were reclaiming their lives, piece by piece. And in doing so, they found healing in each other's presence. As the final pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, Sophia and Leonardo stood on the brink of a revelation that could change everything. The shadows of the past loomed large, but they no longer felt insurmountable. They had faced fear, betrayal, and heartbreak. Yet here they were, stronger, braver, and more united than ever. The journey was far from over, but they had already found something priceless, each other. And as they took their next steps, they carried with them a renewed sense of purpose, ready to confront whatever truths the future held.